Point-shaving scandals are the game's worst of crimes, but they do happen.
From a guy that never had anything, when you come from where we come from, man, who knows what you'll do?
I was the point guard. Point guard is the main player. He's the one bringing the ball up the court. Point guard is the quarterback, so I was in control.
Stevin Hedake Smith, born January 24th, 1972. The cardinal rule in sports is to always play a fair game. An even playing field for all involved because of just that. It's a team game and many moving parts to it that all can be affected by individual decisions. Today's feature committed the cardinal sin in basketball and paid the heaviest prices for it, going to prison and not having a chance to be drafted into the NBA. A dream he's had since a 6-year-old child and a feat he was most certainly qualified for by the time he left Arizona State as the school's all-time leading scorer and the male athlete of the year, beating out some golfer named Phil Mickelson and a quarterback named Jake Plummer. He was a shoo-in for the draft, some even saying he would most likely have been a top 10 pick, and started off his final season as a collegiate athlete with a bang, scoring a season-high 39 points against Oregon State. He was a 6-foot stocky guard that shot the lights out, could control a basketball game like no other on that level, and could drive and score at will against the trees in the paint. He was also a pretty solid assist man for the scorer he was, showing in his senior year that he could average at least 5 a game while still being prolific in putting the ball in the basket like he was known for. A kid that came from the hood, as he later describes his upbringing, with nothing that was on course to a possible $20 million contract. Traded that for $20,000 every game he fixed by point shaving, but in the end still ended up with nothing as a young kid in age and mindset blew through every dime he was paid to fix games. I had it all right in front of me, he says. I beat out those guys, had a 3.5 GPA and was going to get drafted high. I still got the trophy in my house, but none of that mattered to the NBA, who no matter how good Hedake Smith was, he couldn't be a part of their league at that time, even though it was clear more than a handful of teams were interested in taking him early. The last thing you want to be accused of in basketball is not playing hard enough on purpose in order to prevent a team from winning, or set it up so you win by a certain amount and both you and whomever put you up to it are paid handsomely. Maybe had he grew up in a time like today where sports betting is legal in over 30 states and amateur athletes are now allowed to get paid while in college, he'd be a lottery pick for sure. Instead, his era and his actions sent him to prison and killed his NBA draft chances and career. What happened to Hedake Smith? Let's talk about it. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth. Let's get it, man. Take a minute to like, subscribe, and comment on who I should do next. Stevin Smith, or Hedake as his mom called him as a child because of how energetic and athletic he already was, that gave her headaches trying to control him, was a star in his hometown Dallas, Texas in high school. While being recruited by Arizona State, Roy Tarpley would send him a limo to pick him up and take him to a Dallas Mavericks basketball game with free tickets for 2, all in order to endorse his former coach at Michigan and then Arizona State to come to ASU. It was Stevin's first taste of under-the-table actions and most certainly not his last. He signed a letter of intent to Arizona State, and in his first year, he reached his only opportunity to make the NCAA tournament as the 5th leading scorer and freshman. The next 3 years, the team failed to make the tournament behind Hedake's leadership. Stunt number 1, the point-shaving scandal.
They were in a situation where if all I got to do is miss a shot and I'm controlling the game, and I get, what they say, $20,000 a game, I mean, man, come on.
The biggest growth stunt to Hedake Smith's growth was the 1994 point-shaving scandal that made it all the way to the desk of the FBI, who eventually followed $1 million money trail back to a campus bookie, Benny Silman, and a bond trader, Joe Gagliano, who was a professional gambler back in Chicago that sank their teeth in desperate players like Hedake Smith and Isaac Burton. Players who survived off less than $150 a month stipend. Silman and Smith had betting business going on at Arizona State, to which Smith fell behind and became indebted to Silman. One day, Silman, advised by Gagliano, approached Hedake with an offer he couldn't refuse. $20,000 for every game he fixed, getting it to land no more or less than the target number of that day. Thinking no one would ever find out, Hedake agreed to do it, but says that he only could do 2 games because NBA scouts were in the gym heavily that year, watching his every dribble, evaluating whether he was NBA talent or not. The 3 were now attached at the hip and brought on Hedake's teammate Isaac Burton to help the fixing. Burton also agreed to the $20,000 payday and the ball was rolling. With Hedake Smith as the point guard and in control of the games, being the star and NBA prospect he was, the first few games went off as planned, netting Gagliano over $1 million and Smith and Burton $20,000 apiece. After doing this a few times, they both had more money they'd ever seen or know what to do with. So they went to the mall and blew it all on clothes, jewelry, car upgrades, and lavish college life. When the money dried up, Hedake's 2 games only turned into just 1 more and eventually the entire rest of the '94 season. Another bookie caught on to what was happening and wanted in, leading to the betting scale being too heavy on one side and an investigation to begin that made its way to the FBI. By the end of the season, word was already flying around and accusations of ASU games possibly being fixed were in the air. Because of this, Hedake, who was in the midst of fixing a game versus Washington, was told at halftime of a blowout losing end to Washington that the FBI was watching this game and anyone point shaving should be fully aware. Hedake went off in the second half, blowing past the betting line by winning by 18 points and again in debt. But it was already too late. Hedake attempted to run back home after the season ended, even withdrawing from all his classes and not graduating, leaning on the assumption he'd be in the NBA by the time the FBI caught on to him. They did, but not before the draft, where the point-shaving assumptions going national alone saw Hedake fall to the late first, then late second, to not hearing his name called at all at his draft party in Dallas. All because he couldn't wait just a few more months to be drafted into the NBA and do it the right way. Stunt number 2, the NCAA traditional rules. Hedake Smith was in the wrong era for the type of person he was that would even think to point shave a game. The traditional NCAA rules that were built on basically slave mentality made it to where players had to play well all while they starved to hopefully make it pro after, while the NCAA and schools got rich. For the NCAA to even assume it was ever okay to pocket millions while student athletes live in dorm rooms, given overpriced books that they gave back anyway, and $150 a month puts kids in a situation where they feel they have no choice. I'm not saying Hedake did the right thing because it was he that signed up to play the game. Therefore, he and anyone else had to play by the rules. Rules where you certainly could not bet on your own game and then alter your play to make sure you win those bets. The restrictions hurt Smith, who should have been allowed to profit off his talent just like the university was, just like kids are doing today, and maybe he wouldn't have had to resort to shaving points. Stunt number 3, a chance that came too late. The funny thing is, Stevin Smith would make the NBA, but not before he had to make his rounds in Spain, France, Turkey, and the CBA. During the 1997 NBA season, Smith signed 2 consecutive 10-day contracts with the Dallas Mavericks and received his only NBA playing time in the league, as he just wasn't the same as when he dominated in college in his early 20s. He played 8 games and 60 minutes total, scoring 14 points. For his role in the point-shaving scandal and pleading guilty to everything, he was sentenced to a year in prison and released in 2000. Even with the talent and the opportunity to dominate most competition, he decided to shave points and it took away his prime. And when it finally gave him another shot, he just wasn't good enough any longer. All in all, Stevin Hedake Smith will always be known for the point-shaving scandal, and deservedly so. He broke the one rule you shouldn't, and I'm surprised he even played a game in the NBA. he came home and started a program called Now that mentors young people and helps steer them from the life he had. Salute, much respect, but for these reasons, his growth was stunted. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth, and I'm out.